So we are starting part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, being broadcast only on the internet at 08:30 GMT on Monday, the 5th of July, 2021. This is part A. And this part, depending on the various logistical factors involved, will be an introduction to the main events as contained in this part later and in the later parts. And the first thing we have to remind those who are already used to watching this, and to tell those who are watching this for the first time, is that we call it the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. Now, Fleet Street is the collective name of all the English language newspapers, called the so-called British newspapers, that are published from London. They're not all based, their physical addresses are not based in Fleet Street, which is in central London, London EC4, but Fleet Street is the name given to the collection of these papers, because most of these papers historically had their addresses, their editorial publishing addresses, in Fleet Street itself. And although they have moved from Fleet Street, they are still collectively known as Fleet Street. It's a kind of nostalgic reference, and also a reference to the agenda. To those like myself, Fleet Street contains the continuation or the perpetration of collective lies. Lies perpetrated and committed to the many, that is to say, the majority of the population. In our language, in the language of the KHOODEELAAR campaign, as devised by me, Muhammad Haque, is the gullibles. People, the majority of the people who read this, I call them the gullibles. And the editors of the paper and the agenda setters of the paper also deem as gullibles. And in this context, gullibles means more than just gullible in the ordinary dictionary meaning. These are people who are positively prone to being brainwashed and stooged and hoodwinked and misled. These are the people who constitute the main demographic component of what is called populist or popular politics, which is right-wing, racist, fascist politics. And we also assert that this is the program, this KhoodeelaarTV television channel. Although in the background behind me, you don't see any decorations, which could be set up, but we are not putting those up because we want to emphasize the substance of the contents of what we actually represent and broadcast and put on the record. And this is the assertion that we make, which is that in these broadcasts, we are conducting world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. That is to say, we are diagnosing the contents, the bias, the role, the agenda, the narrative contained and exhibited in the likes of the Daily Mail and the Daily Scum, this is the one. And these two papers, the Daily Mail and the Scum, together they have got more kind of numbers of readers than all the others put together. And this is a newcomer to Fleet Street. This is the I newspaper. And the I newspaper increasingly has become an imitation of the Daily Mail. This is the Daily Mirror which pretends to be different in terms of the narrative from the rest of the tabloid papers, which are called these ones. The Scum, the Daily Scar, we call it Scar because it distorts the truth. But it is also a paper that actually relies on the gullibles. The gullibles are the ones that also voted by a slender majority for the UK to get out of the European Union. Now, we oppose the Brexit outcome and the narrative, not on the ground of nationality or nationalization or nationalism or patriotism or whatever. We oppose that because in the population, just under 70 million in the United Kingdom, the rights of the, let's say, 30 million people, rights of the 30 million people, let's say we include the Scottish people, the Welsh people, the Cornish people, who are hardly mentioned as an active living nation, but they are a nation, subsumed by the English nationalists, which we shall discuss in due course another time, not in this particular segment or edition necessarily, but we have discussed it before. So there were 30 million people, including the Northern Irish people, the Scottish people, and the people in the northeast of England. And the absolute majority of the people of African and Asian origin who are either born in this country with African and Asian origins or who migrated here at various ages. These people's rights are violated by the exit, which is Brexit, British exit, that is Brexit. Because the United Kingdom, while it was a member of the United European Union, signed a number of treaties and declarations, all of which were to liberalize and make democratic and humanize the domestic British UK legal framework. And we shall talk about the history of the legal framework being racist for the last 500 years and beyond in another time. Essentially, the Brexit signifies and symbolizes and personifies, epitomizes all things racist, all things imperialist, all things in the subcontinent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, still known as the British Raj. Raj is kingdom or reign. So we shall go back to discussing all of that, and in this particular edition, we shall talk about Kolkata, and we shall refer back to June 1757. And we posted a tweet note earlier today saying that we shall discuss the arrival in Calcutta or Kolkata of the South India cinema, South film actor Kajal Agarwal. We have commented before about Kajal Agarwal being shown as a victim, a target of sexism in the particular movie featuring opposite her, featuring Vijay. And we condemn that script, and we condemn it today again, and we condemn most of the scripts in cinema India, cinema South, Telugu, Tamil, Karnataka, and all the other areas, including Kolkata, of course. But in Kolkata, you have a kind of very active kind of nostalgia relating to Satyajit Ray and his overly praised serious cinema. And we contrast that with the ordinary run-of-the-mill scripts, both in India, Kolkata, and India in Chennai, in Mumbai, and all the other places where most of the popular feature films and movies are manufactured and scripted and edited and conceived. And we are doing this as part of the contextual, historical, world exclusive analysis of cinema India. And we did that for a reason in August 1947. And we are concerned about the fact that the Indian government, the successive Indian regimes, have had reason to lobby and try to own, that is to say, control the contents and the scripts of the narratives of most of the feature films that are supposed to be later made available to the ordinary consumers to have the narrative, the agenda of hostility and enmity to Pakistan. We have no problem in the Indian regimes wanting to do that, except if the cinema producers and filmmakers and cinema industry, so-called, is to be treated as a responsible industry serving the needs of society, of the consumers, to be told the truth about society, then that kind of desire or propensity by the successive regimes to have an anti-Pakistan hostility built in the narratives, the scripts, the dialogues, the scenes, the conversations, like the very short conversation between Radhika Pandit and Punit Rajkumar in that restaurant, where a very short appearance of an apparent Muslim character greeting Rajkumar in Urdu and Rajkumar answering in Urdu, but it lasted less than a few seconds. And Radhika Pandit observing, exclamation, how was it that Rajkumar was able to speak in Urdu? Now, Urdu is not a foreign language. Urdu is spoken at least by 10% of the people, although the official statistics underrates and understates that number. And Urdu is a major language of the world. And Radhika Pandit, as a character, the lead character, should not have been given that particular idiotic, offensive script. And Punit Rajkumar should not have been given that idiotic answer. He should have said, he should have exclaimed that, of course, Urdu is part of Indian languages. Now, Urdu was not there being treated as Urdu. Urdu was being treated as a symbol of Muslims, because more Muslims are supposed to speak, write, know, and like Urdu than others in the demography of the overall demography in India. So what we are concerned about and what we are going to investigate is the role of the cinema collectively in perpetuating this kind of idiocy, ignorance, and of course stupidity that doesn't do any good to the society. And in due course, we shall be talking about the violence. Because most of the scripts and the dialogues are based on the physical violence as the solution. And the only reference to the judiciary or the court system is in a very, very fleeting, tokenistic, and incomplete and absolutely misleading way. The real role of the judiciary, the real role of the police, the real role of the media is never even approached. And the fighter, the film fighter that is about the newspaper, for example, the newspaper related to the something to do with what Mohanlal Karamchand Gandhi did or his supporters did, featuring Darshan as the lead kind of actor opposite Miss Das, who plays the daughter of the minister, murderous minister. This is not really discussing the role of the media in India, either at any stage, either in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, never. That is an illusion, an incomplete, misleading, false illusion. And a significant number of the viewing public in India, viewing public meaning those consumers of the films, the blockbusters, the hit, super hit and whatever, most of the people are able to think. They have the experience on the ground, the real experience. And all they need is an intelligent guide and commentary by the films. So why is it that most of the blockbusters, most of the films have got such poor, ignorant and stupid and prejudiced and hostile scripts and plots and narratives? And the most excitable kind of scenes that are displayed are about Kashmir in so many misleading ways. And in India, there are more than 200 million Muslims, let's say. Now, 200 million Muslims, as we have said, are more than the total population of Germany, United Kingdom, France, and other countries of the Western European kind of part of the continent put together. Now, these are the people, these are the countries on whose attitude and outlook towards the subcontinent most of the intellectuals, the elites in the subcontinent actually look up. That is wrong, but they do that. I mean, when I was in Delhi and I was staying in a place in Connaught Circus, I stayed there for a month and I had to kind of share my breakfast with people mostly born and brought up in India, and all of them are male. I could hear, I could observe the stupidity in their elite sense of superiority. They were competing with one another to come across as Western Europeans. Amazing. And the guy I was in most daily contact with during that period was from West Bengal, Calcutta. And he was embarrassingly kind of exposed in his desire to come across as a Western European person. I was amazed. So that is why I call the use of these scripts and the idiocies contained in them. I call them out because these are the people who were, and who are, and continue to be appointed to the IPC, IAS, IPS, and Indian Administration Service, which used to be the British invention. And the culture has not changed, the narrative hasn't changed, and the sense of independence that M.K. Gandhi, even Jawaharlal Nehru, and his father Motilal, and Zakir Hussain, Dr. Zakir Hussain, the first president, who I know more about because of my relation, not my actual mother's actual father, but my mother's uncle, Arman Ali Chaudhry, who was a very close friend in Assam context of Zakir Hussain. These people didn't. I don't think these people ever wanted to see what is happening in India in terms of the mentality, the attitude of the people to the ordinary people, the people who are appointed in key positions on the police service, the administrative service, the diplomatic, the foreign service, whatever, or the judicial service, the judiciary. Because the Indian court system is a scandal. And the stupidity and submission and supplication and servility to the likes of the eternal embarrassment embodied in Narendra Modi by these courts is something to be actually suffered, to be understood. Unacceptable. So the 200 million plus Muslims are being completely denied, and the hundreds of millions of others, mostly in the northeastern states, including even West Bengal, because Modi and Amit Shah mounted a very vigorous, unsettling coup against Mamata Banerjee in the last 3, 4, 5 months. And the attitude of hostility towards West Bengal is what I am including in this. West Bengal is not treated by, let's say, the Punjab, the Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and most of the southwest, Gujarat, of course, not similarly, with similar solidarity. But West Bengal itself has got problems, as has every single state. Odisha has got serious problems. Bihar has got serious problems. And the fact that these places have got so many problems to do with deprivation, to do with lack of democracy, to do with lack of access to remedies through the court system, to do with the protection from violence and the protection of the civil liberties from the state, from the police. These are issues and problems that should not have been allowed to fester for 70 plus years since August 1947. And despite the fact that some of the concluding central statements as uttered by actors like Vijay, Rajkumar, Ajit Kumar, Mammootty, Darshan, and others who are given these scripts, despite those statements, the ideological statements, the socially desirable kind of aims that are set out in those statements, they don't cover even 5% of what should be said and what should be promoted. Because of the nature of the demography in India, this is the most popular in terms of the contracts people have of the next reality, if you like, to the reality, because the people don't see the parliaments or the assemblies, state assemblies or the central parliament in action in anything like that close, from that close proximity. The cinemas have got the main platform to communicate, and they haven't done that. R.K. Narayan has been mentioned as one of the original kind of writers, and his heroes have been often praised, but nowhere nearly do those characters or the themes approach the reality of India in the last 74 years. So when Kajal Agarwal was made to get into the dirt and the mud by Vijay, the character, the Vijay, and all the mostly male kind of characters were clapping. I mean, in the narrative, in the actual storyline, there was no need, there was no logical need for that. But the fact that it was done and it is allowed to be included and contained in the film as released shows the gratuitous sick-making indulgence and propensity on the part of the decision makers in the film industry and the market. Today we shall update Kajal Agarwal's role in view of the fact that she has arrived in Kolkata and she is excited according to her tweet. And we shall address a number of questions to her, meaning her personally as an actor, as well as meaning the rest of her kind of sisterhood among the actors. We shall start with the sisterhood, and we shall look at the emancipation and the equality that is actually accepted as being entitled, as accepted being a part of the entitlements of the women actors right across the board. And that would be part of the examination of the resistance that is present. Resistance to equality for the minority, if you like, 200 million Muslims, the Dalits, the untouchables, the other people who are not Hindus, and the people in the 7 sisters, the 7 little states across the Northeast. And of course, Orissa and West Bengal. So we shall be doing that in due course. Now we go back to the times of today, London Times of today, Monday, the 5th of July, 2021. And what we are looking at here in the, let's say now what they're doing here, these front pages, today's Fleet Street front pages, the Star and the Scum, because the Sun, owned by Rupert Murdoch since 1969, is the second, if not the first. That is the biggest circulation papers currently. But it used to be for a very long time the most circulated newspaper. Now that doesn't have any moral substance except the practical danger of having a stupid newspaper being bought by most people who buy newspapers, because they're buying stupidity, a pack of stupidity, packaged stupidity. It's like the newspaper, it's like the Cinema South. They've got cinemas, they've got movies ranging from 3 to 4 million viewers to 47, 57. sometimes 100 million viewers, sometimes 360 million in the case of one film movie featuring Kriti Suresh. What is the theme? And what are the morals conveyed? Except the little event where the father of Kriti Suresh in the film, that is shown as making the most poignant and moving and emotional statements of love and affection for his daughter. There is no other scene. The scene where the leading actor and Kriti Suresh playing his opposite have the conversation, the concluding conversation. It contains stolen script from the song, the Urdu song, Kabhi Kabhi Mere Dil Mein Khayal, about the exclusive creation by the creator of the beloved. I mean, that is spoken in such a hasty way that unless you knew the depth of the history of the scripts, you could not even notice that it was a stolen script or stolen bit of words and dialogue. And so many of the dialogues in the cinema, India, are similarly artificialized, fabricated. And the viewer and the public and the records and society are robbed of the truth. And cinema has got no license to distort history under the pretext of artistic kind of liberty and whatever. There is no artistic need. In the case of India, in the last 74 years, if anything, the artistic need has been to go back to the last, 280 years and look at the various operations by the East India Company, and in the case of South India, the operations of the French, the Portuguese, and others in competition with one another and with competition with the East India Company. And I mean, the Taj Mahal is mentioned, M.K. Gandhi is mentioned, even Subhash Bose is mentioned in some of the scripts, but not with justice and not in an educational, enlightening way. These are not trivial things, because the main Hindi language newspapers and their counterparts in Tamil, Telugu, and Kannada languages and other languages, and Bengali languages. The languages, whatever the languages, the script, the agenda in India remains the same, which is in denial of the truth of what has been happening in the country. And it's not a country, it has got more people than other continents. I mean, the population of India, despite the various limitations and factors involved in the collection of statistics and data, is 1.5 billion people, I would think, which is a hell of a lot of people. And anyone who is addressing that kind of population, whatever the level of the particular engagement, has got tremendous responsibility. And cinema India is abysmally failing. Now, what the film Kajal Agarwal has arrived in Kolkata to film. I don't know what it says, what it contains, what it would say, how it would be influenced, whether they care about the comments like this one, let's say. I don't know. But it is time that films in India left the terrain of tickling people with kind of sub-pornographic kind of displays. Okay, some of the romantic aesthetic scenes can be kept in, but they cannot be capitalized on. Like, for example, in one of the films where Rakshita played opposite Darshan, Rakshita was filmed as she was leaving the camera, and her backside was being repeatedly zoomed on. Absolutely embarrassing and stupid and insulting. So, we shall be talking about Kolkata and the rest of the cinema India. We shall talk more about films in the rest of the subcontinent. As we said, because of the numbers involved, India is the priority number one, because the numbers affected, the numbers involved in the industry, and the implication of all of that. And the duties that the cinema as a whole has to help the public get out of backwardness, get out of ignorance, and the propensity to do injustice to one another. So we shall be talking about that. Now back to the Fleet Street papers today. And what we are saying is that, except the Guardian, whose print copy we haven't got because the shop where we got these papers didn't have today's Guardian in stock on the shelf, but we have a look at the Guardian, whose front page we shall have a look. Now this program, KhoodeelaAR television channel, we assert that we knowingly make the assertion that no other platform has got a similar output or content anywhere in the world. Now here is the Guardian. It says, backlash from scientists as Johnson prepares to lift all COVID restrictions. Now this is the Guardian today. And this is the Guardian, and this is the headline. And it says, backlash against Johnson. Now, what this reminds of is the surprise evidence, and contextually unexpected, because the source of the evidence confirmed before a number of MPs in a select committee of the House of Commons on the 26th of May 2021 was by the source is Dominic Cummings. Now, Cummings featured as the notorious component of most of the news during 2020 after the embarrassing trips he made to Barnard Castle in the county of Durham in northeast of England, because that was in breach of the lockdown rules that the ordinary public were asked to observe and abide by. So it's a surprising source because of that. Because on the 26th of May this year, more than a year since he did the breaching, Dominic Cummings claimed confirmation, because it had been said before that particular appearance, that Boris Johnson, during the beginning of the kind of pandemic that appeared in the UK, said let thousands of bodies piled. So he was reluctant to impose safety lockdowns to prevent the exposure of so many people to the deadly disease at that time. And today's Guardian is saying that Johnson is about to do the same thing when he is being promoted. Well, in the language of the times, which is kind of moderate, not in exclamatory way, it is saying that Johnson is asking people for common sense, to use common sense after COVID rules. That is to say, he's going to restrict the restrictions, if you like. He's removing most of the restrictions, either starting on the 19th of July or with effect from 19th of July, as soon as is realistically, administratively going to be implemented. And the line being taken by the scum and the Daily Scar is actually a repetition of what Johnson wants, to relax the restrictions or altogether remove the restrictions. Now, these are what is called the populist kind of tabloids of Fleet Street. That is to say, the ones that are gullible more, they're patronized and read by the people who are more gullible and vulnerable to exploitation, brainwashing, maneuvering, manipulation of their minds, and being zombified. And these are the people who are in the majority demanding an end to the lockdown. Now, this is something that is absolutely serious, because the scientists are saying, even according to the Sun, that the surge, the pandemic, the increase of the virus affecting people has risen 161%. And they're in the same kind of statement, they're contradicting themselves by pandering, that is aiding the political opportunistic agenda fronted by Boris Johnson, by saying, quote, reassuringly, that the number of deaths is decreasing. Now, if the surge of the virus is increasing at the rate of 161%, then the next part of the statement, that number of deaths is decreasing, actually cancels out that admission, that confession, that acceptance of the truth that the virus surge is increasing. So it undermines the danger that is contained in that admission of 161% rise in the spread of the virus. Very similar to what Narendra Modi is doing in India. The Indian papers are completely blind and stupid. Not only the Hindustan Times, the Times of India, the Hindu, the main English language ones, but they are Hindi and regional language counterparts that are running the same agendas, the same narratives. And in the Indian papers, there is no real leading article. They're all over the place. They're scattered and fragmented. And that, as we say, it shows a persisting and worseningly persisting imitation of what used to be the practices during the Raj, during the empire. And all these papers were established by British Raj imperialists, the Hindu, the Times of India, the Hindustan Times. And they haven't got independent from their mentality of servility. So when the Congress party supporter and actor Prakash Raj calls Narendra Modi an idiot, and he refers to the crores of rupees Modi wasted on these structures and kind of egotistic, narcissistic projects, he hardly covers the ground, because Modi has not been held to account by any of the papers, and nobody has actually published even 10% of the extent of the abuse of office that Modi has been perpetrating the last 7, 8, 9 years, which is where the Nehru family is found guilty of committing political suicide for the party and the opposition. They're silent. And high profile likes of Shashi Tharoor are completely embarrassingly silent. I mean, Tharoor is compromised personally over the still unsolved mystery about the death of his wife, and his kind of drawing attention of opposition parties around that. So he's morally kind of weakened and in a way neutralized. And there is nothing that exists on the public domain that can be equated to a dominant personality in opposition to Modi and Amit Shah and other assortments of corruption, criminality, and misuse that have been going on. I mean, the Delhi-based political party, Kejriwal, is not a match. He has got the power in Delhi, but that is not enough. And his commentary is not comprehensive and is not consistent. So what is happening in India is haphazard about the surge, about the virus, and about the hundreds of millions of people affected by lack of service and help. And in this narrative in the UK, in Fleet Street papers, they are treating the public, the society, as infants. Freedom, that is an absolutely untruthful statement. And this is a diversion. This football success, so-called, is an absolutely irresponsible, crazy, irrational diversion that suits Boris Johnson from being held to account. And the same diversion is there. And this is a brazen propaganda by the Times. Sober language, but brazen propaganda, brazen narrative. And the Mirror is actually playing second fiddle, that is to say, imitating the others. Although it is not supposed to imitate, because it is supposed to be supporting the opposition. And this is brazenly imitating the Daily Mail. Now, the Financial Times today has got a piece with a picture of Jacob Zuma of South Africa, and it's called Defiant Stand. Zuma seeks to avoid prison. Now, Zuma was toppled de facto because of his connection with the family from India called the Guptas. And the Guptas were reported as extensively corrupting the South African politics with the aid of Jacob Zuma. And although Zuma hasn't gone to prison, in effect, he has lost all credibility politically because of the corrupt alliance with the Guptas. And this piece in the briefing on the front page of today's Financial Times reports that Margaret Hodge, who is an MP, chair of the cross-party committee on corruption, has called for a law forcing companies profiting from public contracts to publish accounts. That is stupid. Publishing accounts doesn't go anywhere near being held to account. And the Financial Times, which is we have renamed Financial Crimes because it conceals the underlying truth, referred to in various items. And the Indian-born, Uttar Pradesh-born Ruchir Sharma, who is an operative through big business, is sucking up to the Biden administration as part of his strategy. He sucks up to Narendra Modi similarly. He is not a teller of the truth, and he is in disguise because he is employed by Morgan Stanley Investment as chief global strategist. Now he is a global propagandist liar. He doesn't talk about the truth about hundreds of millions of Indians being denied, deprived of rights, including the Indians in the state of his birth, Uttar Pradesh. And this sparred Arab woman, Rana Faruha, has got a piece in the Financial Times saying what Biden can learn from Nixon playback. We should look at that later. And the Financial Crimes is stupidly running the headline in the second editorial today. that the US and allies have a duty to Afghan interpreters. Can you believe that? I mean, Afghan interpreters, of course, have rights to be protected and defended. But what about the rest of the population in Afghanistan that are being exposed to new uncertainties and new threats? And the Financial Crimes has got a piece. It's a big read about employment, and it says that graduates are paying high pandemic price. And they're saying the pandemic is speeding Italy's digital transition. Now, in this piece, that is printed under arts, and it's given the byline of an Indian called Nirpal Dhaliwal. Now, Nirpal Dhaliwal has been given the space for a piece on page 23 of the Financial Crimes today, which overhypes the Indian film actor, apparently aiming to deliver a punch. No way. Even before reading the contents, I can say no way. And they're talking about the film Tufan. Farhan Akhtar's new movie about a Mumbai boxer is part of Amazon's effort to carve a niche in India's vast entertainment market. And it's too hopeful, this description. Farhan Akhtar and his sister Zoya, who often work together. Akhtar as a boxer in Tufan, as a sprinter in Bhag Milka Bhag. Now, Bhag Milka Bhag. They have translated this 2013 film as Run Milka, Run. Bhag is not run, of course. Bhag is escape, run away, hide. That is more likely. So what we shall be doing is looking more deeply at the issues and the roles played by Fleet Street in lying, hiding, mistranslation, as in the case of the particular article we have just discussed. I mean, the Fleet Street played as a peddler when the British involvement in the slum landlord was promoted. Of course, it was a corrupt promotion of a corrupt plot. They never intended to follow up, and they never did follow up, and nor did the actual South cinema, or the cinema in Mumbai, or society in India. We shall come back with part B.